we need to continue the aircraft restoration. We need to continue having these airplanes alive and well, and to have an organization like this wanting to keep the heritage alive, we need to keep it going.
Welcome to the Future in Flight podcast. From a hangar somewhere near the flight line, I'm your host, Sean Starker. And today, we're diving in with a story that is sure to spark your imagination and maybe even inspire your inner filmmaker. Picture this. We're aboard the Miss Virginia, a stunning 1943 C-47 shining in the summer Wisconsin sun at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh. Outside, vintage warbirds roar and modern jets streak by, history and future sharing the same airspace. Inside, I'm sitting down with Kyle Newsom, the creative genius behind the short film Angels in the Sky. From a mountaintop in Nepal to filming planes with some of the best pilots in the world, Kyle's journey is all about merging passion with purpose. We'll explore how he captures the heart of aviation through his lens. Plus, later on, we're breaking the sound barrier without the boom with Boom Supersonic's game-changing technology. So buckle in, because this episode is clear for takeoff. What does it take to turn passion into purpose? To merge two different loves into one meaningful pursuit? Today, we're telling the story of a man who found himself at the intersection of two worlds, filmmaking and flying. It's a story about finding your wings in more ways than one. My interview with the creative force behind the short film Angels in the Sky takes place aboard a piece of living history, the Miss Virginia, a meticulously restored 1943 C-47 that led a long and colorful career of service. Her aluminum skin gleams under the Wisconsin sun at the EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh, the world's largest gathering of aviation enthusiasts. Outside, modern jets scream across the sky in tight formation. History and future sharing the same airspace. Our story begins not in the cockpit of an airplane, but on a mountain in Nepal. Kyle Newsom, a young man with a new camera in his hands, stands atop a mountain in the Himalayas. He's there to honor his cousin who passed away. What he doesn't know is that this moment will change the trajectory of his life.
So the filmmaking passion started back in 2009 when I went to the Himalayas and bought my first handheld camera. And then when I summited Gokyori, and I was just like, then when we got back from the trek, we opened up a library in my great cousin's name, who passed away from lymphoma, unfortunately. And 3 years prior, they did the same trek. So we did the same trek, and I just documented the trek. And when we built that library, I just remember like holding my camcorder, and literally we walked into all these kids, and they were giving Kyle necklaces to my great uncle, my great aunt. And I was just like, man, like the people in this world, they all have a story.
People have stories. Planes have stories. And sometimes those stories intersect in ways we never expect.
And I was just like, okay, how can I mix what I have a passion in aviation with filmmaking? And I combine it together, and I realized there's a need for storytelling in aviation. So I was just like, it's time to put my two passions together.
Kyle returned from Nepal with more than memories. He came back with purpose. To tell stories that soar. Today, his films have become a window into the world of flight for thousands of viewers. His unique cinematic approach captures not just machines, but the human element behind them. Have you ever tried to take a photo from a moving car? Now, imagine doing that from one airplane while videoing another, both traveling over 100 miles per hour through three-dimensional space.
With any air-to-air formation, right, there's needs to be a lot of aerial coordination, making sure that you're flying with a good safety pilot and a good formation pilot.
I think about my own brief experience with formation flying just the day before with the Go Easy Aerobatics team. The concentration it required, the constant micro-adjustments, the hyper-awareness of other aircraft just feet away. It was quite an experience, one Kyle does regularly with some of the best pilots on the planet.
When it comes to a shot, you have to know what angles you're looking at, lighting direction. There's a silicone, basically covers that you can put against the glass in order reduce the reflection. So like making those shots beautiful takes a lot of training and technique and going through the process. But once you get it figured out, you can make these shots really, really beautiful.
As we talk, a vintage P-51 Mustang roars overhead, its Merlin engine announcing its presence long before we see it fly by. Kyle's eyes light up, following its path across the sky.
Oh my God, look at that.
That's what it's all about, isn't it? These moments that take your breath away. And Kyle's mission is to capture that feeling, to translate it into something others can experience even with their feet firmly on the ground. Aviation has always been about more than just flying machines. It's about the community that forms around a shared passion. Walking through AirVenture with Kyle is like moving through a family reunion. Everyone seems to know him or know of him. His camera has become his calling card.
There's so much going on from the people and just going around and talking to people. Everybody comes together for one common purpose, right? Is aviation and the love of aviation. And to me, that's why we come here, and is to interact with the people and look at all these beautiful airplanes.
As Kyle says this, I'm reminded of why we started the Future in Flight podcast, to connect young people with this community that spans generations, backgrounds, and interests. Whether you're 16 or 60, whether you dream of being a pilot, an engineer, or even a filmmaker, there's a place for you here.
Air show pilot. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Fowler.
As we talk, the aluminum skin of Miss Virginia radiates not just from the sun, but from her many stories. This aircraft, this piece of history, is a jewel in a vast collection of aircraft owned by Dynamic Aviation and maintained as a way to inspire the next generation. In a way, Kyle's work serves a similar purpose. His films are gateways, inviting young people to look skyward in wonder. Miss Virginia isn't just any aircraft. Her immaculate restoration is a testament to the commitment of Dynamic Aviation to preserve aviation heritage. Every rivet, every instrument, every surface has been returned to its wartime glory, but with a purpose that extends beyond nostalgia.
You know, just being involved in aviation, we need to continue the aircraft restoration. So when you have the original Air Force One, keep it coming, because we need to continue having these airplanes alive and well. And to have an organization like this wanting to keep the heritage alive, we need to keep it going.
Kyle mentions the original Air Force One, another Dynamic Aviation project. It's a Lockheed Constellation, affectionately known as a Connie, that served President Eisenhower in the 1950s. Currently undergoing restoration, it represents another link in the chain connecting past to future. I asked Kyle about his own future, where he sees his filmmaking journey taking him next.
For me, with aviation filmmaking, I want to continue challenging myself. My end goal is actually to make an IMAX film in aviation. So there's a lot of training and time consumed with this, but I just want to consume myself with the people and the people around aerial cinematography, and just understand it and work with the pros and learn until I can keep growing and eventually create my own.
An IMAX aviation film. The thought of seeing Kyle's work on a screen that size is awesome. But what strikes me most about his answer is Kyle's humility, his desire to learn, to grow, to improve his craft. It's the same spirit that drives pilots to accumulate hours, engineers to refine designs, and restoration specialists to preserve history one aircraft at a time. As our time in the Miss Virginia draws to a close, I think about that moment Kyle described on a mountain in Nepal, how sometimes we find our purpose in unexpected places, how passions can converge into something meaningful. Aviation has always been about pushing boundaries, going higher, faster, farther, but it's also about connection between the past and the future, between the ground and the sky, between people who share a common love. Kyle Newsom's journey from that mountain to this cockpit wasn't a straight line. But then again, the most interesting flight paths rarely are. If you want to see Kyle's work for yourself, and I highly recommend that you do, you can find him on YouTube at Aviators and Airplanes or on Instagram at Kyle Newsom 1. He also has a website which showcases his work, KyleNewsomAviation.com. From inside the historic Miss Virginia, this is Sean Starker for the Future in Flight podcast. Take off with Aviation, America's leading youth aviation magazine. At Aviation, we're here to attract, educate, and empower the next generation of aviators. From standout aviation students and groundbreaking programs to inspiring events, we're giving you a front row seat to the future of flight. Think you have what it takes to be a rising star? Our Rising Star program pairs passionate aviation students with industry sponsors who help celebrate your achievements. And don't miss the Aviation American Dream Tour, coming to a campus near you soon. Dream big, fly high. Join the movement at aviationusa.com. Welcome back to the Future in Flight podcast. Today, we're breaking the sound barrier without making a sound. Did you hear that? No? Well, neither did anyone else when Boom Supersonic's XB-1 demonstrator made history earlier this year. On January 28, 2025, this sleek aircraft did something many thought impossible. It broke the sound barrier 3 times without producing an audible sonic boom on the ground. Before we dive into this revolutionary technology called Boomless cruise, let's take a quick refresher on sonic booms. When an aircraft flies faster than the speed of sound, that's about 767 miles an hour at sea level, it creates pressure waves that merge into shock waves. These shock waves trail behind the aircraft in a cone shape, and when they reach the ground, we hear them as a loud, thunderous boom. This is why supersonic flight over land has been banned in the United States since 1973, effectively grounding civilian supersonic travel after the iconic Concorde was relegated to overseas routes only. But what if there was a way to fly supersonic without the boom? This is exactly what Boom Supersonic has achieved. Time for a quick science lesson. The key to Boomless cruise is something called Mach cutoff physics. When an aircraft flies at the right altitude, above 30,000 feet, and a specific speed range, typically Mach 1.1 to 1.2, something fascinating happens. The sonic boom actually refracts upward due to atmospheric conditions, never reaching the ground. Imagine skipping a stone across a lake. If you throw it at just the right angle, it bounces along the surface without sinking. Boomless cruise works on a similar principle, except instead of a stone, it's a shock wave. And instead of water, it's layers of the atmosphere with different temperatures and densities. The Concorde, while groundbreaking for its time, lacked 2 critical technologies that make Boomless cruise possible today. First, it didn't have the computational power necessary to analyze atmospheric conditions in real time and adjust flight parameters accordingly. Second, its engines weren't optimized for efficient flight in the transonic region, that critical zone between subsonic and full supersonic flight. The difference today is that Boom's Overture airliner features an advanced autopilot system that constantly monitors atmospheric conditions and adjusts the aircraft's speed to maintain that sweet spot where the sonic boom refracts upward. And its Symphony engines are specifically designed for enhanced performance in that transonic region, allowing the aircraft to break the sound barrier efficiently at high altitudes. And this isn't just a minor improvement in speed. We're talking about flights that are 40 to 50% faster than conventional airliners. A New York to Los Angeles flight that currently takes over 5 hours could be reduced to just 3 hours and 30 minutes. That's a 90-minute savings. Let's put that in perspective. Imagine you're a student flying home from college on the East Coast to visit your family on the West Coast. You could leave after your morning classes and be home for lunch. Or for the young professionals listening out there, you could potentially do a coast-to-coast business meeting and return the same day without the grueling travel time that makes such trips impractical now. And it's not just domestic flights. Many international routes that combine overland and overwater segments could see dramatic improvements as well, with the aircraft flying at its full Mach 1.7 capability over water. But how do we know this technology actually works? That's where Boom's XB-1 demonstrator comes in.
There we are. XB-1 is supersonic, faster than the speed of sound. We've got confirmation from the control room that she is supersonic. What a wonderful achievement.
On that historic January day in the Mojave Desert, XB-1, affectionately dubbed Baby Boom, took to the skies for a test that would change aviation history. Chief Test Pilot Tristan Geppetto Brandenburg guided the sleek aircraft to supersonic speeds 3 times, reaching Mach 1.12. Meanwhile, on the ground, teams of engineers monitored arrays of specialized microphones positioned along the flight path. The result? Silence. No boom reached the ground, confirming what the Boom Supersonic team had predicted through years of computational fluid dynamics simulations. They conducted a final validation test on February 10, 2025, which not only reconfirmed the absence of audible sonic booms, but also captured stunning Schlieren images, specialized photographs that visualize shock waves, showing exactly how these pressure waves behaved around the aircraft. According to Blake Shaw, Boom Supersonic's CEO, what they've demonstrated is nothing short of revolutionary. For decades, the sonic boom has been the primary barrier to practical supersonic flight over land. With Boomless Cruise, they've effectively removed that barrier. They're not creating a quieter boom, they're preventing the boom from reaching the ground altogether. This achievement builds on earlier research, including NASA's 2012 study using F-18 fighter jets to investigate Mach cutoff. But Boom Supersonic is the first to demonstrate this technology with a purpose-built supersonic civilian aircraft prototype. Let's talk about the timeline for when we might actually get to experience this technology as passengers. According to Boom Supersonic, the design freeze for Overture is imminent. Within a week of February 11, 2025, the Symphony engine design will be finalized in March 2025, with core tests expected later that year. Construction of the first Overture aircraft is set to begin within 18 months at the newly completed Overture Superfactory in Greensboro, North Carolina. This state-of-the-art facility aims to produce 66 aircraft annually once at full capacity. The first Overture jet is expected to roll out in about 3 years, with passenger service projected to begin by 2029. That's just 4 years from now. And airlines are already lining up. Boom has secured 130 orders and pre-orders from major carriers, including American Airlines, United Airlines, and Japan Airlines. But there's still one major hurdle to overcome: regulations. Currently, FAA regulations prohibit supersonic flight over U.S. land. Boom Supersonic is advocating for regulatory updates that would permit boomless cruise, though the initial certification of Overture won't include unrestricted overland supersonic flight. According to experts who have studied supersonic regulation, the challenge is that today's regulations were written in an era when sonic booms were unavoidable. They didn't contemplate technologies like boomless cruise that could enable supersonic flight without the boom. There's substantial economic benefit to updating these rules. We're talking about potentially billions in productivity gains from reduced travel times. The data from XB-1's flights provides compelling evidence that it might be time to revisit these regulations. It's worth noting that NASA is conducting similar research with its X-59 Quest project, which takes a different approach by redesigning the aircraft to produce a quieter boom, rather than preventing the boom from reaching the ground. Those tests are set to begin later this year, potentially providing additional momentum for regulatory changes. Let's talk sustainability, because I know that's on the minds of many of our younger listeners. Is supersonic flight compatible with environmental goals? Boom Supersonic claims it is. Overture is designed to run on up to 100% sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. This alternative fuel can reduce carbon emissions by up to 80% compared to conventional jet fuel. The company acknowledges that boomless cruise, operating at those low supersonic speeds of Mach 1.1 to 1.2, does incur a modest fuel penalty due to increased aerodynamic drag. However, they maintain that the aircraft retains sufficient range for long routes even at these speeds. For maximum efficiency, Overture operates at either Mach 0.94, just below the sound barrier, or at its full Mach 1.7 capability over water. The boomless cruise speed range represents a compromise that delivers significant time savings while managing fuel consumption. To put all this in perspective, let's imagine a typical flight using this technology. You board an Overture aircraft in Washington, D.C. for an 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern departure flight to Los Angeles. The aircraft takes off and climbs to over 30,000 feet. Once at cruise altitude, it accelerates to Mach 1.1, about 40% faster than a conventional airliner. The autopilot continuously adjusts speed based on real-time atmospheric data to ensure no sonic boom reaches the ground. You might notice the aircraft occasionally speeding up or slowing down slightly as it maintains this optimal zone. Despite flying supersonic, the experience inside the cabin would feel normal, no different than any other flight, except that when you land in Los Angeles, it's only 8:40 a.m. Pacific time. Your 3-hour and 40-minute flight means you've essentially gained 2 hours and 20 minutes compared to a conventional flight. As we wrap up this segment, it's worth reflecting on what this technology means for the future of air travel. For decades, the dream of routine supersonic flight has seemed just out of reach. The Concorde, while technologically impressive, proved economically unsustainable and environmentally problematic. Other attempts like Aerion's AS-2 business jet never made it past the drawing board. Boom Supersonic's achievement with Boomless Cruise suggests we may be on the cusp of a new era in aviation, one where speed doesn't come at the cost of thunderous noise pollution. The company's CEO, Blake Scholl, even joked about rebranding as Supersonic. Will we see Overture aircraft connecting major cities by the end of this decade? That depends on regulatory reforms, continued technological refinement, and economic factors. But for the first time in a long while, the prospect of routine supersonic travel feels tangibly close. Coming up, we're taking a look at lift in our STEM in Flight segment. Don't go anywhere. This STEM in Flight segment is brought to you by Creative Relay Media. When your marketing hits turbulence, remember their motto, "We'll take it from here." From attention-grabbing video to compelling copy, Creative Relay Media creates engaging content that turns viewers into customers. Get your creative campaign across the finish line with Creative Relay Media. Visit creativerelaymedia.com today. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating concepts in aviation, the science of lift. How do planes, which can weigh hundreds of tons, manage to defy gravity and soar through the sky? It's all thanks to some clever physics and a little help from Mother Nature. Let's take off. So let's start with the big question. What exactly is lift? Lift is one of the four main forces that act on an aircraft during flight, the others being thrust, drag, and gravity. Lift is what pushes the plane upward, counteracting the pull of gravity, and it all starts with the wings. Airplane wings aren't just flat surfaces. They're designed with a special shape called an airfoil. Picture this. If you were to slice through a wing and look at it from the side, you'd notice it's curved on the top and flatter on the bottom. This shape is the secret sauce for generating lift. So, how does an airfoil work? It all comes down to how air flows around the wing. As a plane moves forward, air hits the wing and splits into two streams, one going over the top and the other flowing underneath. Because of the wing's curved shape, the air on the top has to travel further and faster than the air underneath. Here's where the science comes in. Faster moving air creates lower pressure, while slower moving air creates higher pressure. This difference in pressure, higher pressure under the wing and lower pressure above it, creates an upward force. Voila, that's lift. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait, Sean, that sounds a lot like Bernoulli's principle. And you're absolutely right. Bernoulli's principle is a fundamental concept in physics that explains how air pressure decreases as airspeed increases. But that's only part of the story. The other part of the story involves something called Newton's third law of motion. You've probably heard this one before. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. As air flows under the wing, it gets deflected downward. The wing pushes the air down, and in return, the air pushes the wing up. This upward push is another contributor to lift. So, when you put Bernoulli's principle and Newton's third law together, you get the magic of flight. Pretty cool, right? But here's the thing. Generating lift isn't just about the wing's shape. There are other factors at play, like the angle of attack. The angle of attack is the angle between the wing and the oncoming airflow. If the angle is too small, the wing won't generate enough lift. But if it's too steep, the airflow can become turbulent, causing the wing to lose lift entirely. That's called a stall, and trust me, pilots work hard to avoid it. Another factor is airspeed. The faster a plane moves through the air, the more lift the wings can generate. That's why planes need a long runway to build up enough speed for takeoff. Those wings need to hit their lift-generating sweet spot. Now, let's bring it all back to real life. Think about those huge jumbo jets like the Boeing 747. How do they stay in the air when they're carrying passengers, cargo, and even cars? It's all about optimizing wing design, speed, and angle of attack to generate enough lift to counteract all that weight. Engineers and scientists work tirelessly to refine wing shapes and materials to make airplanes more efficient. For example, modern wings are often designed with winglets, those upward curves at the tips of wings. Winglets help to reduce drag and increase lift, making planes more fuel efficient. And it's not just about airplanes. The principles of lift apply to everything from gliders to helicopters to drones. Even the wings of birds and insects follow these same rules. Next time you see a bird soaring gracefully in the sky, remember, it's a little physicist in action. So, why is this important? Understanding the science of lift isn't just for pilots and engineers. It's a gateway to so many STEM careers. If you love math, physics, or even art, yes, designing airfoils is part science, part art, then aviation might just be the field for you. That's it for today's STEM in Flight segment on the science of lift. I hope it's been an educational and uplifting experience. That's going to do it for this episode of the Future in Flight podcast. What a ride it's been! From the timeless Miss Virginia to the cutting-edge skies of Boom Supersonic's XB-1. We've soared through stories of passion, purpose, and the science that keeps us flying. A huge thank you to all of you for tuning in. It's your support that keeps this show aloft. If you've enjoyed today's journey, please hit that subscribe button on your favorite on-demand audio app. It's the best way to stay connected with the future of flight. I also want to give a special shout out to our incredible guest, Kyle Newsom. His work inspires a whole new generation to look skyward, and you can follow his adventures yourself. Check him out on YouTube at Aviators and Airplanes, on Instagram at Kyle Newsom1, or visit his website, kylenewsomaviation.com. As always, we'll be back with more stories, more science, and more ways to connect with this amazing aviation community. Until then, keep dreaming big and flying high. We'll see you out there and up there.